Our next guest is a worship leader, a creative genius. He is a father and a great husband. He's on the staff at Grace Life Church, and he is not for hire. He is the gatekeeper of all things cool in our world, and I'm excited for you to hear the story of Matt Cogley. Welcome to Hope Today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
You know, at our church, we're like, is that cool or not? And we're all like, go to Matt. So there's something creative in you. Let's go back to the young Matt. Tell me what your life looked like, what your interests were, what your passions were.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of funny when I was taking the time to think back, you know, just on my life in general. I'd be lying if I said that I didn't think I was going to be in ministry. I did not want to be in ministry at a young age, you know. And there's this lady that pulled me outside after a service one Sunday, and she said, you know, you have a voice of a pastor. And I remember looking at her and thinking in my head, I was like, don't you dare speak that over me. I was like, take that back. I want to be a rock star. You know, I want to be an artist. You know, I want to be on TV. Right. And so, you know, thinking back in those moments, it's amazing how God orchestrates different relationships in your life to where they see the purpose or maybe a calling or gifting that's in you and they pull it out of you. You know, and so I remember one day in church, I didn't seek this out, but the daughter of the pastor was the drummer on the worship team. She just pulls me up out of nowhere and says, hey, you're going to start playing drums. So I'm like, okay. So she sits me down, teaches me the basics, and I start running with it from there. And I feel like that's a defining moment in my life, not just for ministry, but just for what my purpose and calling was. You know, it sparked creativity that was on the inside of me, and then one thing led from another from there. And then so I started doing that, and then fast forward years later, I wanted to play guitar, so I started picking up guitar, just learned it, started playing it, then I felt like singing, so then I started singing, and then a door opened up, and then I got into this band, and I was like, okay, this is my purpose. This is my calling. I'm going to be on stage. I'm going to go on tour, you know, whatever. And sadly, the band was not for the world, it was for the world at the time, and that didn't last very long, because that's not what I was called to do. And then where creativity really sparked in my life is, again, another door of opportunity opened up. There's this man that I met at the gym at the time, and he comes up to me out of the blue, and he goes, hey, I need a marketing director to create graphics and things like that. He's like, I thought of you. Would you be willing to do it? And I look at him, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea what to do there at all, but I take the job. And little did I know, he saw the gifting and he saw the calling that was on my life. He saw this creativity that was on the inside of me. Right. And again, God opened up this door that I never thought was an option. And from there, a lot of the creativity that was always in me started to birth and started to come alive. So even though I was music driven, but there was this other side of creativity that was always in me that I never knew about. And that God opened this door and it started coming up. You
telling your story makes me realize how important it is that we call out that greatness in the people that God has, you know, placed in our path. There's young people in our church, there's young kids in our church, and when we speak life into them, it's almost like a marker in their life.
Right. No, it for sure is. It reminds me almost of you know, Mary with Jesus. You know, when Jesus performed his first miracle, turning water into wine. Well, he even said in there, he's like, I don't think it's my time. Is this the right moment? And so I'm thinking he's thinking what I did. Is this the right opportunity, or I didn't realize this was in me? And Mary's like, Jesus, go do it. Right. And he turns water into wine. She pulled the greatness out of him. And so, you know, the way that God orchestrates relationships in our life for them to be able to see certain giftings and purposes and the way that they pull it out, I think is absolutely amazing.
Are you doing that? Are you seeing God using you to do that to others? Are you seeing are you pulling things out of the younger people around you?
Yeah. I think it's funny, first off, that you say the younger people around me. You're making me feel really old right now. No, I'm only 35 years young here.
There's always younger people. So.
No, absolutely. I think one thing that I've learned, especially in our church, you know, it's who's pulling you and who are you pulling along with you. You know, and so, yes, there's younger people, and it's amazing because I can pull from a lot of the different experiences or things that I've seen in my own life or learned, you know, from those who are ahead of me. And I can see it in people younger than me, you know, and so I'll challenge them. I'll put them in specific positions to pull the greatness and the giftings and the creativity out of them too.
You know, Matt, just hearing about the creativity that God has put inside of you, you have a heart for worship and with God. And can you just talk to us a little bit about your journey of just how you encountered him and just desired him? And just, you know, I know there's a lot of times, especially like as millennials, there's these opportunities where it's like, I'm in the world, and then God's like, time to go. So can you talk to us a little bit about your faith journey?
Yeah, well, you know, I think of the scripture first off, apart from God, we can do nothing. And so, you know, like I mentioned earlier, I was in this band and I was chasing all the temporary and fleshly things. I thought this is what it's all about until I saw it come to a crashing halt. You know, then I realized that, wow, I'm trying to operate in my creativity and my abilities and my worship giftings on my own and without God, and it's getting me nowhere. You know, so the moment that I realized that, I started to recognize, wow, okay, God, I'm chasing after something that I'm not meant to, that has no purpose. And so the moment that I started inviting God in, pursuing after him, God, what's your will for my life, doors just opened up easily. And I can't even explain it. You really can't put it into words, you know. And so the moment that I said yes to God is the moment that everything started changing in my life.
What would you say to people, they just kind of feel stuck in their career, stuck in their family, stuck in their house, stuck with their finances, just to break out of the box and think differently?
Wow, that's a good question. You know, first I think it comes down to is we have to not lean on our own understanding. So I think we're trying to take too much control over what it is that we're a part of or whatever it is that we're doing. And again, thinking back on the moment that I allowed God, you know, to say, okay, God, not my will, but your will be done, I think my perspective started changing. So I started seeing things a lot differently. And I started taking advantage of every moment that I'm in. How can I be a part of the solution rather than bringing an idea? You know, I want to be a part of the solution and part in everything that I do.
Wow.
Matt, you know, there's with a worship leader, there's this vertical and this horizontal relationship.
Sure.
What's that vertical like? Where do you find that inspiration, that relationship with God, and that you can kind of get all of us to like, hey, come on with me, we're going to go deep into God here. What's that like?
Wow, so I just think through my life that man, God's gotten me out of a lot of deep stuff. And if it weren't for the grace of God, his strength, his ability, not my own, to get through it, then man, I'd be flat on my face today. You know, so I think back in those moments of, God, you've really got me out of the most desperate times in my life. And it was truly you that's given me the ability to do so. So I think back in those moments, I'm like, so how could I not worship you? How could I not praise you? How could I not want to exalt Jesus above everything, because it is by him that I'm standing here today.
And Matt, just like you said something just really powerful, there's these desperate times, and I know we were in the green room, we were talking about just how important the stability it is with worship, but even during those tough times, can you just open up, because you shared a little bit with me about just what you walk through with your family and your life that really has given you a heart to run after Jesus and know that he is your stability, that he is the rock that holds you no matter what's going on.
Sure. Yeah, I think like all of us, we have a testimony, and you know, a lot of people might look at you guys and myself and just think that, man, they've got it all together. You know, nothing ever tragic has happened in their life, you know, at all. But that actually wasn't the case. You know, growing up my whole entire life, my dad actually struggled with drugs. You know, he was a drug addict. And so that played a big toll, not just on myself, but my family. You know, so you're going through this balance of life of trying to figure out, first off, God, what am I supposed to do with my life? You know, and if you're calling me to ministry, well, how could I lead people with a straight face but have this chaos going on in my life at the same time, you know? And so by the grace of God, you know, he's delivered out of those addictions today, but that was a really struggle. That was a struggle for a very long time for me personally and for my family too. But I've recognized that by the grace of God, because I made it through it, it's made me stronger as a leader, as a father of my 3 children, and a husband. It's really defined a lot of who I am and that stability in me today.
And I think, Matt, that's what I'd like you to ask you to do. I know there's people watching that identify with your story, identify with difficulties that God has drawn us out. And there are people there that are broken and broken in their relationship with God. Could you just look into the camera and just speak to someone there, maybe pray for them, that whatever God lays on your heart?
Yeah, you know, I think of the scripture in Hebrews 11 that talks about, you know, God's a rewarder to those who believe. And so, you know, if you're sitting at home, you might not be able to fully relate to my testimony, but I believe that one thing that we can relate to is that apart from God, we can do nothing. You know, life on our own is very, very difficult. And so the moment I allowed God into my life is the moment that, not that it was easy, I had my trials, but I was able to make it through. Because why? Because I had a hope. You know, I knew that I was not alone in this journey. And so for anybody that might be at home, you know, regardless of your age, young or old, first off, I just have to tell you that it's never too late in the game. You know, but life is very difficult when we try to do it in our own ability and on our own. So I just invite you and encourage you, let God in and just watch how the doors of opportunity will begin to open for you and how your life, man, will just begin to flow with joy.